Hello there, social media loving peeps. Welcome back to my channel. I'm at it again like a crazy person. You read it in the title. I am going to be discussing this today, okay? So this morning, I found myself thinking about an older GL webcomic I used to love, Lily Love. It's funny how certain stories come back to you out of nowhere like a scent of half-remembered dreams. I don't know why I'm discussing it like that, but back when I was devouring every GL or Yuri story I could get my hands on at the time, Lily Love was one of those stories that stuck with me for a very long time. And of course, it's set in Thailand, and I remember eating it up like it was the most delicious cake. There were quite a few GLs that came from Thailand, but they were just strictly webcomic, not novels, web comics that were just so good at the time, and I have to point that out. So there was something about that story that really stuck with me, okay? Because the narrative was very good. So what that was is it's the intimacy that felt honest between the Sapphic characters in that story. And it's something I noticed that a lot of stories don't even bother with today. Maybe it's because we live in a junk food like era, and it's metaphorically, okay? Given that the media we see today, it's pretty much a lot of things are made out of the mindset of a cash grab, okay? But that has more to do with supply and demand based on the fundamentals of consumerism versus quality in mind. And just to be clear about this, there's nothing inherently wrong with that because even I enjoy a bit of junk food once in a while, but I do have to consume something a bit healthier once in a while, okay? That means I need to watch quality media once in a while and with somewhat accurate representation since I'm a lesbian woman who does keep an eye out for Sapphic works, whether it's novels, webcomics, TV series, films, video games, particularly, and even animations. I'm a big anime fan. I consume a lot, okay? You'd be surprised how far I reach for a lot of things ever since I was a teenager. And my long history of getting to know people who can get me access to it, okay? Let me leave it at that. But back to the topic of representation, which a majority of lesbians in media or sapphic characters in general is not totally accurate depictions of the sapphic dynamic. And you would be surprised on some media, such as sapphic characters in TV series, games, films, and so on, that do get it partially right, but not 100% accurate. Doesn't really need to be, but at least, get closer to the marker there. And to point out the concurrent issue that keeps showing up is that the entertainment industry is still stuck on this theme of killing our gays or making them suffer in some way. This pushes a narrative that being queer doesn't deserve happiness and peace, or even worse, saying we are doomed to suffer for being ourselves. That's what I feel like half the time they're pushing out there. And that's not even true. It's just the media that's doing this. And I wish they kind of would just switch out of that theme a bit. Okay. I think what brought all of this back to mind today were the comments I've seen lately about how sapphic characters jump into romances too fast, particularly with the new release of Life is Strange, or the fact that I go back to the comments about Lily Love and the fact that people say that it's not authentic with how fast the characters move into the romance of things, or they expect the relationship to unfold in the same way a heteronormative romance does, And I have to point this out. Sapphic romance and romance is totally two different things. They're very stark contrasting uh, experiences in life. But if I'm being grounded about it, there's really no such thing as a slow burn in sapphic relationships as a whole. That's my assessment of it because I've lived enough experiences to understand that it's not a thing. Well, not in the way people would imagine. So, What readers interpret as a slow burn in the Sapphic romance department is usually just women navigating the insecurity of living in a society that still treats our sexuality as something uncertain, something hidden, or something we have to be tiptoeing around. Most of the slow burn for Sapphic is based on fear of misreading interest, fear of assuming the other woman is queer or not, fear of being seen as predatory for flirting, the fear of ruining a friendship, and the big one, the big major one, fear of rejection. And because so many of us grew up uncomfortable with how men pursued us, we're cautious about pursuing women. We don't want to replicate that dynamic. Get the picture on that. So we move more gently, carefully, and from the outside, it can look like a slow burn, but inside, it's just longing wrapped in a lot of hesitation. That's the perspective that needs to be clarified for a lot of people, including Sapphic ladies in general who are unaware of this, okay? Let that sink in. But the moment that fear dissolves and two women know they're both queer and both interested in each other, everything changes. The connection becomes fast, almost startlingly so. Let me point this out. One date can feel like several between two women, by the way. It's particularly lesbian women. A weekend together feels natural, but according to heteros, that looks way too fast. And the interesting thing about women loving women dynamics, texting each other becomes a daily ritual of being almost possessive, mixed with the emotion of I miss you being in my radius, which is just another form of breathing for us until you can be with each other physically again. That's the best way I can describe that. Phone calls can stretch into long hours of the night, even falling asleep with our phone still on call until it times out on its own. Yes, that's totally a thing. I've done it. This is how crazy it can get, okay? Just imagine doing all your chores, shopping, driving around all over the place, and even being on the toilet or showering and still being on that phone call with that person through all of that. Can you imagine the hours of that? Thank goodness for unlimited talk. I'd be broke as hell, okay? And don't get me started on video calls. Imagine video calling with your girlfriend and watching the same movie or TV series on that call and watching each other's reactions and commentary on the movie or show on camera. Done that too, by the way. It's totally a thing. And no, it wasn't my idea. But back to the topic at hand. Emotional intimacy deepens quickly, and physical intimacy follows with the same intensity. Believe me on that one. A month of dating can already feel like a committed relationship where you know each other's coffee orders and favorite snacks and the way the other person laughs when they're trying not to. It's basically a whirlwind, okay? But it's a familiar one to anyone who's lived it. Even in the games I stream, I see this dynamic play out. In Life is Strange Before the Storm, Chloe and Rachel know each other for less than 24 hours, and yet the connection between them is unmistakably more than friendship. Rachel even calls it intense herself, and she's right, it is. People who say it's rushed are usually straight women or men who have never experienced how quickly intimacy forms between sapphic women. Even bisexual women I've dated have been caught off guard by how fast and deep the connection can go. They'll say this is moving so fast, but they don't actually try to slow it down either. Some try to suppress it, but it never really works out for that long. I've learned to stop pretending it's something I can or should control. If I want if I want someone, I want her. And I'm old enough to know that desire belongs in a safe space for both of us and not the backseat of my car. Not my fault, by the way, either. But back to what I was talking about. The truth is, most slow burns in media feel fictional to me. And I mean that wholeheartedly because of the life I've experienced around women to women relationships, okay? In real life, the only thing that slows sapphic intimacy down is uncertainty, okay? Once that's gone, the connection happens quickly, like a dam breaking, but that intensity does need grounding because otherwise it can sweep you somewhere you're not ready to go. That's why so many queer women follow the unspoken rule of not making big decisions in the first 6 months, aka the honeymoon phase for us. A month can already feel like partner status to us, and sometimes it is. That's why we have to take into account to follow that unspoken rule that needs to be spoken more often. So, when people insist that sapphic characters are moving too fast or that it's unrealistic for them to fall into intimacy so quickly, what they're really revealing is their own ignorance about how sapphic relationships function. Heteronormativity is not the default for how people connect. If anything, heteronormativity often lacks the emotional intimacy that women build with each other almost instinctively. We can't lie about that. And yes, sapphic media can fall into its own shortcuts, relying on the speed of connection without doing the work of building meaningful intimacy. I've seen plenty of Thai GLs that lean too heavily on music cues or camera angles to convey emotion that the story itself isn't carrying, but that's a writer's issue and not a sapphic one. Let's be clear about that. This is why Lily Love stands out to me. The story is built on intimacy. Donut, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, maybe, is unsure of her sexuality, but Mew is open about hers and she makes her interest clear. There's never a moment when Donut doesn't know how Mew feels. The only question is whether she'll reciprocate. I know I'm struggling on my pronunciations here. I have that issue. And once she does, everything unfolds quickly and naturally. The same is true in Lily Love 2 with Ploy and Ice. Their relationship is more complex, more mature, and beautifully grounded in a way that's relatable with kinkier characters and stories. We love those kinkier characters. I sure do. They don't label what they are, but they're deeply woven into each other's lives, okay? Their intimacy feels earned and it doesn't feel like it's manufactured at all. I suggest you read it, by the way. Honestly, I wish a GL studio would adapt these stories instead. They balance emotional depth with sensuality without leaning on toxic tropes too much. That seems to be problems with Yuri, is the fact that it leans into a lot of toxic tropes, okay? There are other stories like this too, like Lily Love. Korean Sapphic works handle slow burn with such care as well. However, since I'm a writer as well of fantasy stories, I understand sometimes an artist passes away before completing their work. That does happen, and it's devastating on the readers who are fans of that work. There was one story, Fluttering Feelings, that was finally reaching the moment of confession between the two characters, the first kiss, and the emotional payoff. But the artist got sick and passed away before completing it. Some artists have been creating fanfics around that work and trying to complete it in a way of fulfilling what the original artist was trying to do, but time expired before they could. I do believe in the concept of passing the mantle of works to other people to finish if you know that you're not going to be able to do it, because we are human and we are here on a finite amount of time, okay? But even that slow burn was rooted in repression when you pay attention, okay? The webcomic showed how societal expectations shaped women, making them believe they should date men, marry men, and never step outside of that script. Forbidden romance for Sapphics isn't about sneaking around behind parents' backs. It's about living in a world that only accepts heteronormativity. And that's the cultural problem that makes Sapphics feel uncomfortable through shame and guilt. It makes things a lot more difficult than they have to be. And honestly, if heteronormativity didn't exist, Sapphic slow burns would barely exist either. I'm talking about making heteronormativity default. Because women-loving women connect quickly and they bond very quickly. We build intimacy quickly and we make life decisions super quickly. We adopt pets, we move in together and build futures at a pace that feels natural to us, which we might as well just say it's light speed. Everyone outside of that who doesn't understand that needs to learn to accept it. Those comments or opinions that say Sapphic characters ending up together quickly is rushed, that's an inaccurate take entirely. And I can't stay silent about that anymore because it's 100% wrong. It's an ignorant take rooted in biases. Heteronormativity has nothing to do with Sapphic romances. A lot of Sapphics would agree with me on this. This is why lesbians want straight women and even bisexual women to kind of stay out of their business a lot because they don't understand the fact that our minds do not revolve around men. It's 100% revolving around women. I think about women every day. They're on the top of my head. No man is in my brain. That's why I'm a true fucking lesbian, okay? And this is why I can say a lot through my experiences out in the wild that lesbians connect very quickly with other women. We really do. When we don't limit ourselves and don't have commitment issues or any of those other things, we just like get together super quickly and start building a house together. Like in Lightspeed, like literally 1 year together with another woman feels like 8. And you can take that as a fine grain of salt. But to get back on the topic, and let's try to end this on a positive note-ish. But yeah, a slow burn for Sapphics is just really rooted in fear. It was just romanticized, okay? Our oppression and fear got romanticized. Take that as you will. And thank you for watching.